And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We got some AEW Dynamite news. We got some AEW news. And we got some banter going on social media. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you all for getting us to 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube. And this is our way of showing you thanks. If you want to support the channel any way you can. You can also submit questions through Super Chat, and we'll try to go through the questions throughout the episode as well. So, again, thank you very much for that. But Ralph, let's start the episode here with the news of some releases happening here in All Elite Wrestling that we saw that we have Bea Priestly being released, Sadie Gibbs being released, and also Jimmy Havoc is being released here. And Bea Priestly and Sadie Gibbs did comment on this. Sadie Gibbs saying, "My journey, it's been one hell of a ride. I've never expected to get easier. I just expect my core values and perception to evolve and for me to always find grace within moving forward. Hashtag undefinable." Thank you so much to Tony Khan and All Elite Wrestling for giving me a chance of the lifetime. And also Bea Priestly commented saying, "I'm so grateful for the opportunity to work on such a big platform with such a great roster. I wish All Elite Wrestling the biggest success and hope that everyone will stay safe and healthy. I will miss you all. But until then, obviously the circumstances with the pandemic led to this. I know some people are saying that the things that we saw with the Me Too and speaking out movement might have played a role with Jimmy Havoc and also Bea Priestly. Ralph, what are your thoughts on this?"
Yeah, I kind of think that it was only a matter of time that things were going to start happening like this. WWE certainly released quite a bit of talent, and I know people are certainly critical of them, but I think in a situation in this situation specifically for AEW, they had to really take a lot of things into consideration. And the biggest thing is the fact that they're paying people, or people aren't necessarily able to participate and travel as freely as, they would want them to. So if they're paying them, or there's a lot of situations where they can't necessarily perform because of the travel situation, it's a tough spot. What do? Do you pay those people? It's a tough time for not just AEW. It's a tough time for everybody across the board. So they got to make these difficult decisions. WWE had to make difficult decisions. AEW has to make difficult decisions, and pretty much every company in the wrestling industry is going to have to look at themselves in the mirror and make decisions like this. So I have no doubt that both Sadie Gibbs and Bea Priestly will end up somewhere, whether that's, with NXT further down the road, whether that's back with AEW. I think that's only a matter of time, especially Sadie Gibbs, because I remember sending you clips of her a couple of years ago, I think, and she's extremely athletic. And I think that she's going to go on and do quite a few things within the industry, and it's just a matter of time before somebody picks her back up eventually.
Yeah, I totally agree that we will see Sadie Gibbs and Bea Priestly again. I think Bea Priestly, obviously with her boyfriend, Will Ospreay, being in Japan, she does stuff with Stardom. That's probably where she's going to end up, just staying with Stardom, do the UK circuit, and maybe goes back to All Elite Wrestling. Sadie Gibbs, I know it seems like she might be leaving wrestling for the foreseeable future with this Undefinable. It seems like she's starting a fitness brand, Undefinable. So that might be where she ends up doing things. Very interesting. Hopefully they do end up, back on their feet again. I think they'll be totally fine. And, Jimmy Havoc, I know there's things going on with him. I think that one was pretty obvious why that happened.
Yep.
The question now is this it, or will we see more? Because obviously they have other international talents, and, this could just be the start of it. And they also have a lot of people that they just don't use anyway. So is Tony Khan's dad going, "Hey, I'm signing the checks here. You can't just sign everybody like you want to"?
Yeah, I mean, Tony Khan's the boss. It's really his money that he's using here. So, it's tough because, you want to be able to support your employees, especially during a difficult time like this. But it's not just specific to the wrestling industry. I mean, so many people have been furloughed and laid off throughout the entire, United States and certainly the world because of the pandemic. So it's unfortunate that these things are going on, but you can't necessarily just pay people to sit home if they can't perform. So it's a tough spot for Tony Khan because there's always going to be some negative, feedback that you're going to get from the fans releasing people during a difficult time. But they got to make smart business moves and they got to do what's best for them. They do have some high profile guys that are under contract too. So you got to think that they got to free up money for those types of people, especially if you're AEW, because you have WWE who has a ton of overhead and they're huge. And they also make a ton of money. Even in this situation, they're making money. But they've been able to really structure themselves where they have multiple streams of revenue coming in. AEW probably has that, but to such a smaller extent that they have to really make calculated decisions. And it's like, if these people are sitting home, as difficult as a decision it is to make, they have to make those decisions at the end of the day. It's just business.
Right. Totally agree. Totally agree. Now, the one thing that really, really sucks the most about this with the releases is that it is Bea Priestly, it is Sadie Gibbs. Those are two wrestlers that really could have helped the women's division that is really struggling right now. And obviously, I think they hurt the most with this pandemic because there's still wrestlers that we're not seeing. Riho's not there. Shayna's not there. Yuka Sakazaki's not there. Obviously, Bea and Sadie Gibbs weren't there. So the women's division is in really a state of flux, especially when they're only getting like 6 to 10 minutes at the most on an episode of AEW Dynamite. We have the Deadly Draw tournament and the finals happen next Saturday on that special episode of AEW Dynamite. But what can AEW do here to get back that women's division, try to make it at least competitive with some of their other promotions like WWE and NXT?
Well, we've seen them let people go out there and take risks to really try to promote themselves, whether that's like Sammy Guevara, who's allowed to go out there, Ricky Starks, they're able to go out there and cut promos and try to get over and things like that. So I think it's just a matter of whatever talent you have, that's what you have. You have to let them go out there, cut promos, take risks, and try to promote these people. Because if you can't have people who are, from other countries traveling in and out of the United States right now to work, and certain people are stuck where they are, unfortunately, you got to work with what you got. And it's unfortunate that right now, I don't think they're necessarily trying to do that. They're more or less just saying, all right, well, this is what we have. We're going to give you guys 6 minutes. And, with Sheeta, for example, they gave her that really quick squash match. And then you didn't see much from her except that little promo. They have Penelope Ford there. They have other people who they can potentially push. Nyla Rose, we saw that her and Vicky cut that promo, and we haven't seen much from her since. So, maybe a little more Latina heat and try to do something going forward with that.
Well, you talk about Latina heat, and there's this rumor circulating that Thunder Rosa is going to be facing Hikaru Shida for the women's championship. I know that Thunder Rosa has been pointing out that she wants to challenge Shida for that title.
Right.
She is the NWA World's Women's Champion. So I don't know. While NWA is not putting on shows, I would love to see it. Obviously, semantics and logistics do have to play a role in that. So hopefully that does happen. And just want to remind everybody first, thank you all for joining us here on the Squared Circle Psychobabble live episode. We will be answering your questions throughout the episode. And if you want to donate, cut the line. You could donate with a super chat here. Any dollar amount to help support the channel will be greatly appreciated. And if you, just to make sure I see it in the live chat, if you do a hashtag in all caps question, follow your question, and then I'll try to read them. So, but let's move on to AEW Dynamite tapings. As we saw in this past episode, they are bringing more fans into their shows. They did cut to the fans. JR mentioning that the fans are coming back. Although we knew for a while that fans have been coming back, it just seems like now they just brought it to their next phase of bringing fans back to All Elite Wrestling tapings. And in fact, one person that was there, those that follow wrestling Twitter might know Jessie Davin, Jessie the Buckeye. She was there in attendance. She did talk about the things that were happening there. She said that parties were grouped together. They were socially distanced. They had it planned well beforehand, and it seemed like things were much better than how they looked on camera. So, Ralph, obviously a step in the right direction. People would say this might not be the right move, but what do you think about this?
It's only a matter of time. As we continue to work through this, as companies continue to work through this, I don't see any issue with them, especially now. From what we understand, they were testing people before they went in. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
Okay. So if people can go and slobber all over each other at a Fozzy concert and not be tested, you can have limited people be tested, socially distanced. I mean, it's a big outdoor place. And by big, I mean big enough where if you're letting limited amount of people in who have been tested, you can do this the right way. So I know that some people are going to be a little critical of them, especially because we're in a pandemic. We're a divided country right now. Everybody's got an opinion to mask, not to mask, whatever. They were enforcing that masks should be worn, and they were making sure that those things took place. So, if you can do it smartly and you can try to do it to the best of your ability and space everybody out, which it seems like they did, no issue. I mean, this is going to happen more often, I think, going forwards, and somebody's going to have to take the first step in this.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And now we know that WWE, they're getting out of the Performance Center and heading to the Amway Center in Orlando. And I think that is a great, great move. And not only that, they're trying to do this virtual fan thing. So I think the NBA and the MLB, they're trying to do their way of bringing fans into the show, whether it's virtual or through the internet, whatever the case may be. Anything's better than no fans because, it's been, 6 months since this happened? I think it's getting to the point where it's like we need to shake things up, even if the shows have been good or bad, depending on what your personal preference is.
I'm all for the virtual fan approach to that, especially because it takes away from the, just the empty arena feel.
Yeah.
And we saw to a certain extent they were piping in boos and cheers during the Edge and Orton match. And I know they've done that going forward from there. So there's a way you can do this and have it feel more real and more genuine than just like having the guys go out there to an empty arena. Because, with AEW, I just feel like they were the first ones to go out there and really put the wrestlers around the ring, and just that feel to it felt different, and it made it more impactful, and it made you buy into it more. The fan base and the reaction of the fans is such a big part and plays such a huge role in, being able to tell if a guy is over, how you're supposed to react to certain things that are going on in a match, all these different things. It's so important to the flow of the show and the flow of the match that, you need to try to figure out ways to be competitive and get that aspect of the match back incorporated. I was so shocked that WWE didn't try to do more of a virtual fan thing for WrestleMania, considering that it is such a big show. And I tweeted this out. I think it was the MLB, and I was like, worldwide leader in sports and entertainment. It's like, how did you guys not think of this as a concept? And maybe they did, and they just said, we're not going to do it. I don't know. Try something, even if it didn't look great.
Well, Here's the thing. I know that there was an attempt to do the CGI eye during the eye versus eye match, and it didn't work. So they went with that prosthetic thing. So
the ping
if they
pong
couldn't
ball.
figure out the CGI eyeball, they were not going to figure out virtual fans.
But how are they not able to figure that out? They're the WWE. They are huge. I mean, they're it's not like their backyard wrestling promotion. They got to have, even if they're able to outsource that to somebody to say, look, this is what we want to do. We'll pay you to do it. Cool. And I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
Maybe, but all right, let's head to the last bit of news before we head to your questions. And again, get those questions in the chat. You could cut the line with a super chat. Just put the hashtag question next to your question so I can read it better.
Do you all see my candle I got lit here? Do you see that?
No, what candle?
Right over there, right where my finger is.
Okay.
Bed Bath & Beyond. Banana muffin. Smells amazing in this house right now.
Good to know. Good to know. I have no candles lit because I don't want a fire getting set while we're going live, but
you suck.
I know, but okay, here we go. Last bit of news that we'll talk about. It's not really news. It's more just like banter on social media. So Matt Jackson goes on Instagram, posts about his his little spot that he had in his match against the Dark Order where he flipped off the ramp onto, as Ralph calls them, thing 1, thing 2, and I don't know what we're going to call him. Let's just call him thing 3 just for the lack of better naming. And Matt Jackson says, I really stuck that landing, didn't I? And I think that was a rib on Dexter Lumis. At least that's how it could be interpreted as. And Randy Orton saw it, and he had to comment. He said, sweet landing, but you didn't hit anybody. Tell Cody, Goldust, Harper, Swags, Y2J, Matt Hardy, Zack Ryder, Spears, Ambrose, Arn, Malenko, Gunn, and most importantly, FTR for me. So, yeah, I guess he's ribbing into the Jacksons and the Bucks and AEW yet again, Ralph.
Is there anybody who's having a better year than Randy Orton? I mean,
it's hard to debate.
Right. And here's the thing, like, he's so far into his career that he doesn't necessarily need to do these things, but he's really embracing, and it seems like he's reinvigorated, and he's definitely trying to do the best work of his career. I mean, whether it's the promos that he's been cutting, whether it's just he's so in touch with the character that he's trying to portray. This is just, like you said, back and forth banter. We talked about this with Jim Cornette and Chris Jericho. I think it's much of the same thing, a little bit of tongue in cheek. I think they actually responded with, tell Paul thanks for the generous offer or something like that. Talking about Paul being Triple H, because they did try to get the Young Bucks under contract, and obviously they didn't go to the WWE or NXT. They went with creating AEW. So,
can you hear me, Ralph? I think we lost you for a second there.
I can hear Cassidy. I was just joking, but I'm sure we'll get into that. I'm sure there'll be questions.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, let's go into those questions, Ralph. So again, if you guys want to join the chat, just hashtag question, but you could cut the line and you donate to a super chat. Any donation will help with the show. Maybe get us a better Wi-Fi signal for the next time we do a live episode. Maybe we won't do it at 10 in the morning when everyone's online on Saturday. Who knows?
Someone said Ralph's streaming with a baked potato. What the hell does that mean?
Ralph's streaming with a baked potato? I have no idea what that means.
Are we talking about my bald head here?
I guess.
You notice that's one of the most favorite things people like to comment on when they try to say something poorly about me. Ralph has no hair. Yeah, no shit. I look at myself in the mirror every morning. I see that.
I don't know. But people are crazy out there, I guess. But all right, let's go to the questions here again. Hashtag question here. Let's see. First question. Scott C asked, what are your thoughts on WWE using the Amway Center in Orlando as their new base of operations? Could being in a bigger building add to the allure with enhanced crowd noise? I don't think the crowd noise is a good idea, but I think the virtual fans will definitely help with that. And if they can somehow get their audio into the PA system that the wrestlers can hear, I think that's a better idea. But what do you think, Ralph?
I love it. I think they need to change the scenery. I think that they've had a lot of things go negatively for them, especially the feedback from the fans, because, the shows have not been very good, not entertaining. And I think that just as something as simple as a change of scenery, something different, is just like a restart. Okay, this is going to be something different. It's going to feel different. It's going to be a little more fresh. So I think it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to, just to kind of see if it makes things a little more interesting and enjoyable, because I find it very hard to get into WWE product for quite some time, unless it's something to do with Randy Orton or, Matt Riddle, something like that. NXT is mostly good most of the time. Could do without the fireballs, but
what about Retribution and the storyline of Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt on SmackDown?
I my thoughts on Strowman. I am not a fan. Retribution, I don't know what to think yet. I guess I'll wait and see. I don't know. I even that I find it difficult to get into.
Right.
It just seems like everything they do is so overproduced and doesn't feel genuine and doesn't feel organic.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Let's head to the next question here. I just had it and now it's gone. Where'd it go? Okay, Chris Leland asked, should Inner Circle split up?
I would love to see Santana and Ortiz go with Eddie Kingston.
That would be good. I agree with you there. That's
I would love to see that.
Yeah. Right now, I don't think the Inner Circle really should. And, I think all the factions in AEW, I think, really help with some of the storytelling in AEW. So I have no problem with it at all. So I would not split them up right now until Jericho goes on his tour with Fozzy. Then maybe you start a split there just to get him off TV. But until then, I say no. When would you split up Santana and Ortiz? Would you wait till fans come back?
I don't think, if they go with what I'm trying to say, where they side with Eddie Kingston, I don't think they necessarily need fans to come back because, if you don't have a strong mouthpiece, I think it's important to get that type of reaction and that shock because that helps draw the heat and, get somebody to the point where they're hated by the fans or, it suggests that you should feel a certain way about somebody. With Eddie Kingston, he's a guy that can go out there and cut really good promos. So even if you're sitting at home, he makes you feel something. He gets you emotionally invested. So the best wrestlers and the guys that cut the best promos are able to do that. They're able to evoke emotion, whether you're in front of nobody or you're in front of, 20,000+ people. So I don't think it necessarily matters that fans aren't going to be there if they wanted to do that. If they decide to go with Eddie Kingston.
Right. I agree. Next question here, Ralph, is from California Lockdown. Is EC3 really Dixie Carter's nephew? No. Simple as that. No, EC3 is not really Dixie Carter's nephew. In fact, EC3's real name is not Ethan Carter. I'm off the top of my head. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure in the live chat someone can tell me. And of course, guys, thank you very much for submitting these questions. If you want to cut the line, I'm just going down the live chat in the order they come in. But if you want to cut the line, you could donate on the super chat. Any dollar amount would be greatly appreciated to help support this channel any way you can. I know times could be tough, but, this is, our way of showing you guys thanks for helping us get to 10,000 YouTube subscribers here. Jamie Williams has the next question. When will Adam Hangman Page and Kenny Omega break up? I think it happens at All Out after their match with FTR and they lose the belts. And that's how you start the split. And then Kenny goes on his way. It could lead to Kenny getting the title off of Moxley at Full Gear or something else with FTR, the Bucks, and Kenny Omega and Adam Hangman. There's a lot that they could go with this split. So I think it starts at All Out.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. I don't know necessarily when this is going to happen, but I think sooner rather than later. The thing that I'm interested in now is the dynamic between Hangman Page and FTR and seeing if that plays a role in any of this, or they tease Kenny Omega potentially turning heel once, maybe twice. So maybe that happens. But I think soon that does happen sooner rather than later.
All right. We did get a super chat here. Thank you very much for the super chat. $2.50 donation for Harold Romero. Do you feel Cornette's overreacting on his hate for AEW? Ralph, your thoughts?
Repeat that. I'm sorry. I was reading the questions in the chat box there.
Do you feel Cornette is overreacting on his hate for AEW?
I think he's deliberately overreacting to get a reaction out of fans. Because let's be honest here, the AEW fan base is very loyal to the product, and a lot of them feel like, that AEW sometimes can do no wrong. Jim Cornette is a guy who's been in the industry for a very long time, and I think we have to at least be able to admit that. So his point of view, whether you agree with it, you disagree with it, he's going to present his point of view with the volume turned up to 100. That way he gets a reaction out of the fans. That's why Jericho literally went on there and called him out, because he knew it was going to get a reaction. So, that's I think he's doing it purposely.
I agree to some extent. Like we talked about this already. Like, Jim Cornette is a character, and one thing that he always says is he's got to protect the business, and no one protects a business like Jim Cornette. So if his characters protect the business, he's going to take that to 10. and especially when he's behind a microphone or on camera. So he's just going to really put it in there. So I don't think he's overreacting. I think there are things that AEW can fix. Obviously, the women's division. Obviously, the tag rules being enforced by referees. Obviously, Mike Chioda counting to 4, not 3. Those are things that we could work on in AEW.
The interesting thing, somebody made an interesting comment. I believe it was on our most recent video about Jim Ross commenting during live TV about the lack of following of rules.
Yep.
I don't know if you got a chance to see that, I believe,
yes,
right?
I responded. We both responded. I think we actually have disagreeing points with this. Because I said he should be calling them out because he's probably telling them behind closed doors and they still don't. So he's trying to, like, maybe you'll listen if I bury you purposely on camera.
Right. Well, that's my perspective. That's my point of view. I don't think he should be doing it on live TV unless he's trying to draw heat. Like if he's trying to get heat on the tag team that's not following the rules deliberately, but it seems like he's genuinely doing this with based on his frustrations with the lack of rules and the ability to enforce the rules.
Right.
And we could have that debate, at another time, because I think it's come up multiple times here on our show. But to me, I think if you follow the rules, especially if you're a tag team like the Young Bucks, you can really establish your comebacks better. You can get over more, and you can get your shit over to a better extent. Like the moves that they do, especially because they're so athletic, if they pick and choose their spots, picking those spots and doing 2 or 3 of those spots as opposed to spot, just throughout the entire thing. And it's like a train wreck sometimes. That will make it more impactful and people will buy into it a little bit more. The casual fan. A lot of AEW fans are just going to be like, okay, this is awesome. It's great. But you got to remember, they're still a relatively new company who's trying to expand their fan base. And you still have to win over those lapsed fans or those fans that are accustomed to, this is what a traditional professional wrestling match looks like. Now, I'm not saying that they can't make adjustments and they have to follow that to a T, but I think to a certain extent, if they toned it down a little bit and followed the rules just a little bit more, it would be better in the long run for them.
Yeah, I agree. But, they try to be the alternative. If they have to be the complete opposite of WWE, maybe that's what they're trying to do. And maybe this younger audience that they are engaging in don't really care about tag rules. Maybe they don't really care about, the refs counting to 4 instead of 3. Maybe, there's some things that the younger audience might be more forgiving about than what they're seeing with WWE, which seems like overproduced, ridiculous storylines and stuff like that. So time will tell if this independent style of wrestling can make it mainstream with AEW. Can they hold on to these ratings, past, the first year or so? Will they go up? Will they go down? I don't know. Time will tell. But next question here from Ziftus, one of the first people actually joined the stream when we started here. His question was, since you think Jon Moxley will lose the title, what storylines could he be put into? You could definitely do something with him and Eddie Kingston. You can maybe revisit the storyline with Omega without the title. You can, you could go a lot of avenues with Jon Moxley. You could have him chase the title. He could still be in the title picture. There's a lot to go to. There's a lot you could do with that. Ralph, what do you think they should do with Moxley?
Well, it's not so much what they should do with Moxley. Moxley is already an established guy. What they need to do is establish a couple more heels. Get some guys on the map other than MJF, who obviously he's going to be working with, and then you let Moxley work with those guys.
Yeah.
He's a top guy. He's a top guy. I mean, no matter how you look at it, he's the current champion right now, and he's probably their most noticeable guy outside of, just the AEW fan base. So he can work with pretty much anybody. It's just a matter of getting a couple more heels to the level of, I guess, like an MJF, somebody who's an established heel.
Maybe. We'll see. We got a couple of super chats here. So the first one, thank you, Scott C. His question is, true or false, at some time in the next few years, Chris Jericho goes back to WWE? I say false. I think he retires with All Elite Wrestling. There's really not much for him to do in WWE. He'll just end up being a mid-card guy. He won't have any more like major title runs anymore. I don't see him going back to WWE. unless it's for the Hall of Fame induction.
Exactly. You don't see a Hall of Fame run and then one last match at like a WrestleMania. They always go back. They all go back. Even the guys that left on the worst of terms go back.
Randy Savage never went back.
Okay, well, he's the one guy.
He is the one guy, but
this is the thing. And Vince, however you want to, whatever you think of Vince McMahon, he truly does try to do what he feels is what's best for business. I'm not saying that I always agree with his decisions on what's best for business, but it's his company. He could decide whatever he wants. And he always brings people back no matter any of the type of terms they left on. And that could have been Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. I mean, you go down the list, Bret Hart. To think that if WWE is going to be around in the next however many years, let's say Jericho works for another 6 years. Let's say he's got 6 years left in him. And I don't even know if he plans to do that, but that would put him right around 60 something.
Who, Jericho?
Yeah.
No, he'll be 55 in 6 years.
How old is he? 50 something now?
He's 49.
Okay. Well, he'll be in his mid 50s by that point. Okay. He's in his mid 50s, right?
Right.
You don't think at any point, if WWE's still around and he decides, look, I'm done, I'm not going to wrestle anymore, and he decides to leave AEW, that he's going to go back to WWE for at least one last match?
He might. I mean, never say never always in the professional wrestling world. We know that. Never say never. But like I said, it's probably just to go back and get inducted into the Hall of Fame because like you pointed out, he's 55 years old. There's really not much left for him to do. And I think his contract with AEW is for 4 years. So I just don't see it. But I don't know. Maybe he does have one last run. I don't even know who he would have a match with if he goes back for one last match. Does he do
Kevin Owens?
You could do it with Kevin Owens, but they already had that match. But you could always revisit. There's not just because they have it once doesn't mean they can't do it again. But
AJ?
Again, that's another one. He already did it once.
He needs to avenge, right? Because AJ lost to Jericho.
Yes, I believe so.
At WrestleMania, his first WrestleMania, he lost to Jericho. So
yes. So, all right, another super chat here. Harold Romero, thank you again for a $5 donation. He says, in my opinion, NXT's women's division is better than AEW because in NXT, the women's are constantly together instead of coming from different independent wrestling styles. Yeah, I agree to an extent. That's why, but I also think the reason is they get more experienced independent wrestlers. It has nothing to do with where they came from. It's just how good are they, how well they could adapt. And right now, it seems like Kenny Omega and Brandy are the ones that are running the women's division. And it's not necessarily that they're bad in the ring. It's just the booking is really the issue. The booking is the problem. It's not that the talent's not there. The booking has been terrible. And the fact that they're not even on TV is part of the problem too. Like Hikaru Shida is the world's champion and she's only getting like a 5-minute squash match on Dynamite.
Yeah, and you also have to consider this. I mean, look at the feeder system that NXT or WWE has in place there. I mean, they're literally learning from some of the best ever. Shawn Michaels is associated with NXT. Triple H obviously has his involvement. So they're learning from people who have been around the industry for a very long time. I mean, and you just look at the infrastructure of NXT, it's hard to compete with that. I mean, for AEW, a new up and coming company who's really like, okay, we got all these people under contract. We're going to try to do our very best. And yeah, you've got experienced people there behind closed doors, but nothing to the level that NXT and WWE has in place.
Right. All right. Another question here. This is from, oh my God. I apologize if I butcher this, but Alchemic Token T. I apologize if I messed that up. It's hard to read these on the spot, but the question is, what do you think about WWE going TV 14 last night? I didn't really notice anything of the content that was really worth TV 14. Like, did you notice anything that was like, oh my God, we need to rate this TV 14?
No. I honestly, although I didn't finish watching it yet, I got an hour into it and then we started recording. So I'm going to watch the last hour after, but if you had just told me watch SmackDown, I would have probably not noticed anything different.
Right. I mean, there was the Retribution stuff, but that wasn't really TV 14. The stuff that closed the show with Bray and Strowman, I don't think was worthy of TV 14. Just very interesting that they went with that. I mean, if someone might point it out better than I can, but I didn't see anything that was like, oh my God, it's TV 14. But I don't know. Maybe Mandy Rose showed too much cleavage in the episode. I don't know. That seems to be the only case. I don't know. All right, next question here is from Austin NY28. Question: what do you guys think of New Japan King of Wrestling concept? I don't know if you follow this concept, Ralph, but basically how this is working with the King of Pro Wrestling tournament is there's a round of one-on-one matches where the stipulation gets chosen, and then the winner of all those matches end up in a match together for the winner being the King of Pro Wrestling. I believe that's the concept. I'm not 100% on that. If someone could correct me, feel free to do so. But what do you think of that concept? It seems kind of convoluted.
Well, it could be good and it could also be disastrous, especially depending on the type of matches we're getting into. I mean, when you look at what TNA was doing and a lot of things that a lot of times when people were critical of TNA, it was because they were doing so many gimmick matches. So if it turns into something like that, it might be difficult to maintain and ensure that it's still enjoyable. But I mean, if they have something where it's like submission match, last man standing, Iron Man matches, it could work.
Yeah, it's a weird one. We'll see how that goes. But next question here from Juggalo Roddy Piper. Nice. Roddy Piper's joined the chat from the great above. Awesome. His question is, why does the guy who beat Rock and Austin in the same night need Mike Chioda to assist him in defeating a comedy relief character in Orange Cassidy? Ralph, the floor is yours.
He shouldn't. And I brought this up last week because I feel like, and I don't know you personally, but if you can confirm this in the comments section, are you somebody who watched wrestling during the Attitude Era? Were you a fan of Chris Jericho during the Attitude Era?
I would assume so. I'm assuming so because he's saying that he's mentioning the night that The Rock and Austin lost to Jericho.
Yeah, and this was the point I made last week for anybody who didn't see that episode. Chris Jericho has been a guy who's been around the industry for a very, very long time. He's been in the ring with some of the best wrestlers of all time. Rock, Austin, Kurt Angle, you name them. He's been in matches and won matches against those guys. Unfortunately for a guy like Chris Jericho, the Attitude Era was the biggest time period where most people were watching professional wrestling. Many of the people that were watching professional wrestling during that time no longer watch professional wrestling. We know that, and we can confidently say that because you can see the numbers drop off for both WWE, and there's just not as many people into wrestling right now, except for a lot of the hardcore fans. The hardcore fan base and the fans that are into AEW and dedicated to it, they're gonna really root for Orange Cassidy and accept him for who he is, regardless, in any of the situations he's in. So to them, yeah, you're going to be able to put him in a match, meaning Chris Jericho, in a match against a guy like Orange Cassidy, and they'll buy into that and they'll be emotionally invested. Now, if you're a lapsed fan, you're going to look at that and you're going to say, this is a guy who is in the ring with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and beat them, two of the biggest stars, maybe the biggest stars of all time in professional wrestling. And you want me to believe that he's going to lose to a guy like Orange Cassidy. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that there is a large, large percentage of the lapsed fan base that is not going to buy into that and accept it. And that's just the facts. And that's what I've been trying to tell people from the beginning.
I mean, you're not wrong there, but maybe Orange Cassidy does become the next big thing in AEW. Who knows? It could happen, Ralph. And you will be proven wrong, and you'll have to face Orange Cassidy at some pay-per-view just to have him embarrass you with his kicks and his slaps. And I know everybody wants to see it. They want to see Ralph versus Orange Cassidy. We've seen that in many comments.
I wouldn't subject myself to that level to step into the ring with somebody as carny and indie as him.
But you have no experience whatsoever. You've never trained before. He actually has more training than you do.
I can do this. Shin kick.
All right. All right, moving on. Next question here from Mark Mello. As per Tony Khan on 83 weeks, the second show will need to be a different format. Do you think they'll do something closer to New Japan tournaments? Would it also fulfill the promise of sports-based? Honestly, I think it's going to be AEW Dark or something like that on the second show. Because right now, what they're doing is showcasing a lot of talent on Dark and giving them wins to help them, be number one contenders. But then they go on AEW Dynamite and it's like, oh, they're the number one contenders. And there's people out there that probably are like, how are they the number one contenders? They barely wrestled. Like Brian Cage, like Lance Archer, like Brodie Lee. Like they rack up wins and people are like, unless you're watching AEW Dark, people are like, how are they the number one contender already? So I think it's going to be Dark.
Well, Lance Archer's claim to fame this past week was he ripped off Jake Roberts' shirt and had that. Who the hell wrote that on his back? Or was it his stomach? I think it was his back.
His
right?
back.
Guys,
it was his back.
We did get feedback. So I like Orange Cassidy in parentheses in his spot, not fighting a world champion. That's the mindset that some people are going to have about Orange Cassidy, which is why I've said, look, I get it. This guy is over with a very specific subset of a very specific fan base. Maybe he can be the next big thing in professional wrestling. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I don't see it.
Yeah, we'll see. Only time will tell. But we have another question here. This one from Mr. Ricks. And of course, if you guys want to cut the line, I'm just going down the live chat in the order that they came in. If you want to cut the line, you could donate a super chat. Any donation helps to support the channel. I thank you guys very much for helping us get to 10,000 YouTube subscribers over the past week. And, there's a lot of things that are going to be happening on this show for you guys to help support, and that will be coming in the next couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that. But the next question here, Mr. Ricks, what should AEW do with the women's division? What actions should they take to make it better? Just put them on TV. Why isn't Nyla Rose on every week cutting promos? Why isn't there more than what? Like, the matches don't need to be 15, 20-minute spectaculars, but you can have multiple 6-7 minute matches just to showcase these women. It doesn't take much. And I know they're a limited roster, but if you're doing a storyline with Britt Baker and Big Swole for All Out, have them on every week to build that up. Hikaru Shida is your world champion. She doesn't have to wrestle every week, but just showcase her. Put her on TV and, have her watching these women's matches. Yeah, it's not hard.
And remember back to when Pac wasn't on the show every week, but they'd figure out a way to put a quick video package together, and those were really well done.
Yes.
Little things like that. She doesn't have to wrestle every week, but there's certain things that can be done to make sure that she is still meant to feel important, which I think is really missing.
Yeah, it really is. Next question here coming from Darlene Bimbai. Thank you for your question. Do you see AEW and Impact establishing a working relationship? FTR in the North have teased wanting a match recently. Well, also, we have Xavier Woods and Kenny Omega saying they want to have a match. That doesn't necessarily mean that WWE and AEW will join forces. Obviously, Thunder Rosa is trying to get a match with Hikaru Shida. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get a match or a show with NWA and AEW. Impact Wrestling, I think right now, does not really need AEW other than for the national TV exposure. They got a pretty good roster. Their women's division is much better than AEW's right now. And they were actually the ones that were able to sign all the former WWE talent that were released back in April. So I don't see a relationship between AEW and Impact because, quite frankly, they might be competition in a few years down the road if Impact could get themselves on a much better network than Access TV.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. I mean, I don't think Impact wants to do that right now. They went out and they got a pretty good, solid group of talent, especially some of those guys that left WWE. And that's fine because especially like a guy, or I should say a team like the Good Brothers, they're pretty well established, even though they were used poorly in the WWE. EC3 is back there where he belongs. And granted, it's not necessarily the same EC3 that we're accustomed to seeing in TNA, or I keep saying TNA, but Impact, whatever the hell you want to call it. So yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, I think I know everybody wants to see these partnerships or whatever, but I don't think that's happening, especially AEW. What do they really get out of it other than showing people dream matches? And it really benefits those that partner with AEW more than it partners AEW themselves. So I just don't see it. But let's head to our next question. And I just had it. Where'd it go? Users, when I figure this out again, thank you guys for helping us get to 10,000 YouTube subscribers. This live streams for you, and we're answering all of your questions as we can. Make sure you use the hashtag question so I can read it better and find it better in the live chat. And if you want to cut the line, you just donate a super chat of whatever dollar amount. You know, it could be $1. Don't matter. If you want, you know, your question answered as soon as possible, that's how you do it. The question comes from Austin Miles. What matches do you think will be added to All Out? So we have MJF versus Moxley. We have Big Swole versus Britt Baker at All Out. Cody, I'm assuming, will have a TNT Championship match. The question is, who is he going to face?
Triple H.
Yeah, seriously. At this point, that's the only person he hasn't beat, or you know. But obviously, I think Paige and Omega versus FTR will be a match. Shida versus somebody.
You think Darby answers the TNT title? Answers the challenge?
No, I think that actually ends up being Darby versus Brian Cage for the FTW Championship.
Yeah,
I think is where they're going with that. Darby, I know a lot of people want Darby to take the title off of Cody, but I would not be surprised if next week Brodie Lee takes the title off of Cody.
God.
I know you're not a fan. I know you're not a fan of the Dark Order, Ralph, but they need some big wins.
Look, they've been on TV for how long now? If people aren't buying into it, if they're not interested, then it ain't going to work.
That's true. That's very true. But next question here.
Colonel Sanders and Thing 1 and Thing 2.
Let's see.
It's a two-piece with a biscuit.
Yeah. Dan Goose asks, do you think the rerun of All Out will be NXT this week? No, because All Out is on YouTube. NXT is on the USA Network. So you can't compare the two when it comes to TV ratings and YouTube streaming. So if the repeat of All Out gets, I don't know, maybe, I would say probably 500,000 views, maybe 10, maybe 750,000 views, but NXT probably will get a bump in their total viewership, I would think. But it's hard to compare, you know, a YouTube show to something on TV, because what we see in the ratings is just what is on people watching with live cable. That does not include streaming products. That does not include the DVR unless they're watching it the same night. There's a lot involved with it. So no, I'm saying no on that. What do you think?
I hate to change the subject here, but as I'm going through, there is something really quick that I want to talk about here.
Go ahead.
Somebody did say, I like the Dark Order. They're hilarious on Being the Elite. But here's my problem. And I've said this from the beginning with AEW. Whether it's Being the Elite, whether it's some kind of obscure show on YouTube that they're trying to promote and build storylines within, if it's that important and if it's getting over to the extent that they want it to get over, it should be on Dynamite. You shouldn't have to feel like you're doing your homework to try and pay attention to a storyline because it's on Being the Elite. There's only so much time people have to dedicate towards professional wrestling. And people shouldn't have to go out of their way to understand, okay, well, this is happening because of this. That's my feeling on it.
Right. Harold Romero just gave us another $2 on the super chat. Thank you very much, Harold, for your $2 donation. If Mr. Brodie wins, BTE is going to be fire. So yes, just pointing out exactly what you were just saying.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If he has that much charisma and he's that funny and they can be funny, or whatever the case is, it should be happening on Dynamite. That's their primary show. You know what I mean? So if you want people to be invested in a certain character or a certain storyline, should be happening on your main show and not Being the Elite.
Right. I agree. I agree 100% with that. And I think a lot of the storylines are being progressed outside of Dynamite, where people would have a much better understanding if they were put in inside AEW Dynamite. Like, they promote Being the Elite. Like, Being the Elite should be on, check it out Mondays, 12 o'clock on YouTube. But, like, put a segment of Being the Elite on Dynamite. So it's like, oh, crap, I could have saw this on Monday, but I'm seeing it on Wednesday. I'll go watch. Like, there's so much counter promotion or cross promotion you could do with it that they're really not taking full advantage of. And WWE does the same thing with their social media. Like, their storylines progressed on Twitter, on Facebook, and stuff like that, and they just miss them. And they're not like putting them on their programming, and it's a huge disservice for those that just watch for the sake of just Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, because that's what most people are doing. They're just watching what's on TV.
I agree. If it's that important, it should be on their main show.
Yes. All right, let's see. What's the next question we got here? Again, thank you guys for helping us get to 10,000 YouTube subscribers. Make sure you put the hashtag question so I could see the questions better in the chat. And if you want to cut the line, you could donate to the super chat and join the super chat party. Let's see. Question. Actually, okay, we already did that question. All right. Corey MacArthur, his question is, are you guys still tuning into New Japan Pro Wrestling? Don't hear too much from you guys on what they're doing. Here's the problem. I don't know for those that follow other channels on YouTube, but it seems like anybody who covers New Japan Pro Wrestling is getting copyright strikes and like getting threatened to get their channel shut down. Actually, a former guest of the Squared Circle Psychobabble, Tyler Williams, is a huge New Japan Pro Wrestling fan, does cover New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he's covered this on, he basically can't talk about anything New Japan Pro Wrestling because they keep bringing him copyright strikes. He has like 7 copyright strikes for stuff that here in America would probably be covered under fair use. So why aren't we covering it? Honestly, we don't want the copyright strikes, even if we're just talking about it. So, and also the fact that with the pandemic, they weren't on, so it's hard to follow stuff when there's nothing on. But now that they're back, I will admit I will have to get back into it. But that's part of the reason why we're not covering it. Have you watched anything with New Japan, Ralph?
A little bit, not as much as I normally would.
Yeah,
but not as loyally as I have in the past.
Right. All right, another question from Ziftis here, and his question is, who do you think takes the TNT title off of Cody? I wouldn't be surprised if it's Brodie Lee. Do we see Zack Ryder, a.k.a. Matt Cardona, at All Out? Do we see Darby Allin? There's a lot of ways they could go with this, but I think my gut instinct is saying Brodie Lee, and I know there's been rumors and spoilers circulating that it is, in fact, Brodie Lee next week, but I'll believe it when I see it. I try not to follow spoilers because people just throw shit out there hoping it sticks, and then it gets spread, and then that's how we get the whole fake news bullshit that we always get. So who do you think takes the title off of Cody?
To me, it's got to be a guy like Darby. Look, Cody, for whatever people want to say about him, has helped establish that title. That title was supposed to be the equivalent of the heavyweight championship for AEW. And he's done a really good job of building up how important that title is by defending it each and every week, or at least most weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brodie Lee is a guy that is the leader of the Dark Order. He's always going to be the leader of the Dark Order. He's always going to be an intricate part to the storylines. He doesn't need that belt to make him, if that makes sense.
Right.
That belt, because it is prestigious, at least we've been told and made to feel that it is prestigious and important, can help create or build a new star. Put it on a guy like Darby Allin, put it on a guy like Scorpio Sky, put it on a young up-and-comer, because that will help make that individual. And it's not just like more of like a lateral move. Like, you're putting an established title on a guy that's established in Brodie Lee. He doesn't need that. Brodie Lee is going to be Brodie Lee. He's the leader of the Dark Order. People already buy into him. He's the funny guy on Being the Elite, apparently, whatever, right? Put the title on somebody young that's up and coming. Let that make the person.
Right. All right. Another question here. This one comes from Ziftus again. Man, you guys got a lot of questions here, and we are happy to answer as many as we can here. If you want to cut the line, donate a super chat. All of you guys, thank you for hitting 10,000 YouTube subscribers on our channel. So, do you think there should be less tag matches and more promos and one-on-one matches? Yes. In the short term, yes, absolutely. I think the big problem with professional wrestling today is there's a lot of guys that can't cut promos, and those that can don't get a lot of time to cut promos. It's just very, very seldom, unless you're MJF. It seems like he does more promos than actually wrestling, but that's fine. I think the problem is people just are trying to say, oh, the match is just going to get over by the sake of the match, but no one cares about the match if you don't give them a reason to care. That's the problem, I think. Ralph, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it needs to be a little bit of a balancing act here, but I mean, I think that a really good segment is going to do more for somebody and their, like, someone's ability to buy into that person or a tag team. So that segment will mean more than just going out there and having a good match for the sake of having a good match. We all want to see good wrestling, and they've got 2 hours to do that. I think that they can dedicate X amount of time of that show to, like segments like MJF has, where he's able to go out there, cut a promo, and draw more heat. If MJF goes out there and has a match and wins, that's great for him because it moves him up in the rankings. But if he goes out there and he cuts a promo like he did about Jon Moxley over the past several weeks, that's going to get him more heat. It's going to get more people talking on social media, which is ultimately what you want. So, yeah, I mean, it's great that they have a good tag division and they go out there and they have good matches. But to me, a good 5-minute segment where somebody gets over or draws heat is more important and more beneficial and more impactful.
Right. It's all about the storytelling. And if you could apply storytelling through promos without having all these different matches, I think you'll end up, the payoff will be much, much better. So, all right, next question here. Or actually, it's not really a question. It's a $5 super chat. Thank you very much, Juggalo Roddy Piper. Darby and Cody is becoming the Sheamus Orton feud of AEW. Enough. Let Darby get the FTW title. He's got to get a belt eventually. I don't know if it's the FTW. I think more the TNT title because it's actually considered one that is recognized by AEW. But what do you think about that? What do you think Darby should take the FTW title from Brian Cage, especially that it just got brought back?
No, I still genuinely think he should be the guy to take the belt off Cody Rhodes, and I'll tell you why. So the story we've been told with Darby to this point is that he can't get that big win. He's lost to Moxley multiple times. He's lost to Cody 3 times, or they had that one no decision match. So the story we've been told so far with Darby and his character progression is he can't win that big match. You're not really going to find many other guys on the AEW roster that people are just going to get behind. Like he almost has that Daniel Bryan effect during the Yes Movement. Certainly not to that extent, but people get behind him. They want to see him win. He's a guy that you can easily relate to and root for. If they go full-fledged with this Cody heel turn, I mean, having him go out there, especially when the crowds are able to come back and you can have fans there, if he takes the title off Cody, it would make for a huge moment because it's really the culmination of this really long story where Darby can't get that big win. And there's one thing that people always say they want with professional wrestling is it's longer storylines that people can buy into. With that, you can always go back to it. I think that will be a huge part in his character development. So I get what he's saying. Like some people are going to look at that and be like, we've seen enough of this, but I think Darby needs to get that big win and it should come at the expense of Cody.
Right. I agree. But next question here is a super chat, $10 donation. Thank you, Scott C, for your $10 donation and joining the super chat party. When is the perception going to end that these companies are not making business decisions to needle each other? They're businesses, not dueling factions. # get over it. Obviously, it seems like what Scott is trying to say here is like, oh, they're making decisions because WWE does this, so AEW responds, or AEW responds, so WWE has to do this. I'm understanding the question correctly. Please, clarify if I'm not. But honestly, I agree. They're businesses. They just want to put out the best product ever, or the best product possible. So if someone's going to do this, you could go, hey, I might be able to do it better. You know, if McDonald's has the Big Mac, does Burger King just say, all right, you guys have the Big Mac. We're not going to do anything to our menu to get people back to Burger King. No, they bring the Whopper. And then Wendy's is like, hey, we're here too, but don't do anything about it. No, they're going to bring the spicy chicken sandwich. So that's the thing. Like, like I understand people saying it's all of this like, oh, they're being petty stuff. No, or petty stuff. No, it's not pettiness. It's business. What do you think?
We already know my thoughts. Likes and retweets don't pay the bills.
Right.
So it's great to have this mindset that, you know, it's all inclusive and everybody should get along and all that stuff. But you know what? A long time ago, a guy named Vince McMahon went out and he pretty much bought out all the territories, took all the talent, and look how big WWE is right now. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but to just assume that WWE or AEW or any of these companies should really sit back and just say, oh yeah, we're going to let that company grow because it's best for the industry. It's like, at the end of the day, these are two businesses. They are in competition with one another and they can both survive. That's fine. But to think that they aren't going to try to one up each other and that this isn't business, at the end of the day, it comes down to money. It comes down to talent. You have these two companies that are, you know, AEW is growing. They're able to get talent from WWE. Obviously, we've seen that with Moxley. We've seen it with FTR, and just to name a few. So they're competing with one another.
Right.
Money matters. Revenue matters. And as much as people want to act like it's not business, it is. It still matters to them.
And the other thing, too, is like, obviously, people say, oh, NXT's on the USA Network because WWE wanted to counter program AEW.
Yeah.
Let's not forget this. If you look at the most viewed networks in cable in the 18 to 49 demographic, right next to each other is the USA Network and TNT. So what makes you think USA Network weren't the ones that were like, we lost SmackDown. Can you guys put NXT on the USA Network? And WWE is going to be like, sure, if it means that we're going to get more money out of it. So it's like, it's all business moves. And I understand why people say, oh, they're just being petty, but it's more than that. It is absolutely more than that. But thank you to Gaming Fanatic for a $5 donation to the Super Chat party. He says, I think the Elite is going to break up. Then the Four Horsemen will start. I think the Four Horsemen will be FTR, Shawn Spears, and Cody Rhodes. What do you think? Now, I know a lot of people have joined this channel and subscribed recently because of our video where we talked about the Four Horsemen and this possible Four Horsemen faction. And obviously that seems like it's obvious that it's going to be FTR, Shawn Spears, and who's the fourth? I know you've brought up MJF. Cody obviously is one that we talk about. I said Hangman Page. I think Cody really should be the antithesis of whatever this faction is, just like Dusty was with the original Four Horsemen. So I think what ends up happening, and we saw this past Wednesday on Dynamite with Tully and Arn bringing back that stuff from last year at All Out. So I totally see it being where it's FTR, Shawn Spears, and Hangman Page, and Cody is the one going against the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, and we did a whole episode on this. If I was to have my pick, I said it would be MJF, who essentially would be like the Flair of the group because he can cut such good promos, and you need that strong mouthpiece, in my opinion, to head a group, a faction like that. So he would be more or less the leader of the group. You'd have FTR and you'd have Wardlow as the muscle.
All right. Another $5 donation from Scott. His question is, where is Pac? Pac is in the United Kingdom. So unless they gave him the travel exemption, he's still there. And as much as we want to see him, he's stuck due to the pandemic. And, he's actually one of the lucky ones that did not get released because of this. We know Jimmy Havoc did. We know Bea Priestly did. And we know that Sadie Gibbs did. So what are your thoughts? Should they at least get him on TV with like promos? Or do you think because they don't know when he'll be back, it might be just like teasing and teasing and teasing and teasing to the point where it's like, All right, we don't care anymore.
Well, I think that he will be back. He's too big of a name that of a guy not to get back on television. I'm sure there's a way they can work it out where they cut some promos and make some be fine.
Right. So, all right. The let's see, what's the next question we got here? I think we're having some Wi-Fi issues again. Again, if you guys are, we're gonna try to answer a few more questions before we head out. Thank you all for joining us here on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Thank you for getting us to 10,000 YouTube subscribers. I think we'll do one more question here. And that question is, let's see, Anthony JCP. We'll close it out with this one. Do you think WWE missed out on Nicole Savoy in a faction with Shayna and Mercedes? I'm not too familiar with Nicole Savoy to make a comment on that, but I think if AEW could get as many women to help with that division, they can. I think Ivelisse and Diamante are going to be great additions to that women's division. So I have no issue with it. So Ralph, what do you think with this? I don't know. Did you see Nicole Savoy? She's little swole in the Dynamite Draw tournament.
That's really how you want to close us out, talking about that.
All right, we'll do one more question.
I'm going to touch on this topic really quick. I'll give this person a little acknowledgement. So this is Anthony JCP.
Yep.
Who are your 2021 Royal Rumble winners? I think Edge will be returning by that time. Hopefully so. I think Edge. I think Orton will take the belt off of Drew McIntyre. He should. He's the best heel. Him and MJF, in my opinion, are the best heels in the business right now. I think that McIntyre and Edge should both eliminate each other simultaneously at the Rumble, set up a triple threat between the three of them. I think that would be awesome. And hopefully we can have some fans there for it. So Edge can get the proper return, send off, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Okay. Well, I have one more question, and I think this is a much better one than the one I picked out. This one I think we could definitely comment on. Question: how do you guys feel about Rusev? Showing up at All Out to take out whoever the AEW champ is at the end of the show? I think his retirement from wrestling is a work. This is from Josh Verse. I mean, it's possible, but maybe he feels like his Twitch thing can, hold him out and doesn't necessarily need to wrestle anymore. It's totally possible. I think I saw Eric Rowan is filming a movie. So just because they were released in wrestling doesn't necessarily mean they have to go back to wrestling in another promotion. And, Lana's still getting a pretty good paycheck from WWE. I'm sure he did well in WWE where he doesn't need another paycheck again. So I know people want to see him in AEW, but he might not actually be coming to AEW. He might not wrestle at all. And I think he's going to try this Twitch thing for a while. So I do not see him coming to All Out.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think that he's a guy that can, help. Again, AEW, first year up and coming company still. Getting a guy like that is that's a little more established in the industry. It's always going to help you. So, maybe somebody like him, a name that hasn't come up in a while, which I'm surprised about because I know he was working towards getting healthier, potentially a comeback as Ryback. Don't know if we'd see something like that, but who knows?
All right. So, again, thank you guys. We try to get to as many questions as possible. I appreciate you guys joining us here, to the donators of the Super Chat Party. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for subscribing, getting us to 10,000 YouTube subscribers. And hopefully next time we do this, we'll have much better technology and not having all these weird Wi-Fi issues and drop frames or whatever. I'll work on this for the next week, but we really appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti, my name's Michael Valenti. Thank you all for joining us here on the Squared Circle Psychobabble.